She walked into the dealership wearing jeans and a simple white t-shirt, inquiring about a luxury car. The salesman looked her up and down with disdain. "I'm sorry, but I think you're in the wrong place," he sneered, gesturing toward the exit. "These vehicles start at $300,000. As other staff members snickered and customers stared, her face flushed with humiliation. She left without a word. The next morning, a gleaming Rolls-Royce Phantom pulled up outside the dealership. When the back door opened, the salesman's jaw dropped. He never saw it coming. The prestigious Boston luxury motors sparkled under the morning light. Glass walls showcased a fleet of exotic vehicles: Porsche, Bentley, Aston Martin, Ferrari, each more expensive than the last. Margaret Collins, known as Maggie to those close to her, stepped through the doors. Her brown ponytail bounced slightly with each step. She wore a simple white t-shirt, well-worn jeans, and minimal makeup, reflecting a woman who valued practicality over presentation. At 35, Maggie exuded a quiet confidence that came from knowing exactly who she was. What wasn't apparent from her modest appearance was that she was the founder of the Collins Foundation for Children with Disabilities, an organization that had transformed thousands of young lives. Years before meeting her now husband, she had built the foundation from nothing, pouring her heart and education in special needs development into creating real change. As she entered the showroom, her eyes immediately fell on a sleek midnight blue coupe, perfect for her sister's 40th birthday. Caroline had always dreamed of owning a luxury car, and after beating breast cancer last year, Maggie wanted to give her something truly special. She could easily afford it. Her foundation's success and personal investments had made her comfortable in her own right, though few knew that. Across the showroom, Blake Thompson adjusted his blue tie and straightened his navy suit jacket. As the sales manager, he prided himself on spotting serious buyers instantly. At the sight of Maggie and her casual clothes, he smirked and nodded to his colleagues. This would be amusing. "Good morning," Maggie smiled at a young salesman named Daniel, who approached her. "Welcome to Boston Luxury Motors. I'm Daniel. Is there something specific you're interested in today?" Before Maggie could respond, Blake smoothly intercepted. "I'll handle this, Daniel," he said, then turned to Maggie with a practiced smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Looking for directions, ma'am?" And just like that, Maggie's day at the dealership began, a day that would change perspectives for everyone involved. "Actually," Maggie replied pleasantly, "I'm interested in that midnight blue coupe." She pointed to the $285,000 vehicle displayed on the elevated platform. Blake Thompson's smile tightened. He'd seen this before, people wandering in to daydream about cars they could never afford. With end-of-month quotas looming and 3 serious buyers expected that afternoon, he had no time for fantasies. "That's the limited edition Azure. Only 15 were made this year," he said, emphasizing each word as if speaking to a child. "Perhaps I could direct you to our used car division. They're in a separate building about 3 blocks east." Maggie noticed how his eyes darted over her simple clothing, lingering on her scuffed sneakers. She was accustomed to such judgments. Most people had no idea she deliberately chose this way of living, finding freedom in simplicity despite having access to immense wealth. "I'd really like to learn more about this one," she persisted politely. "Is it possible to see the interior?" Blake's expression soured. Behind him, 2 salesmen exchanged knowing glances. "The Azure is by appointment only," he lied smoothly. "Our serious clients typically schedule private viewings." Just then, a couple dressed in designer clothing entered. Blake's demeanor transformed instantly. "Please excuse me," he said to Maggie without actually looking at her. "Why don't you take a brochure? Daniel can help you with that." He strode toward the couple, arms outstretched in welcome. "Mr. and Mrs. Harrington. Wonderful to see you again." Daniel, the younger salesman, approached Maggie with an apologetic smile. He couldn't be more than 25, and his suit seemed a size too large. "I'm sorry about that," he said quietly. "Would you like me to tell you about the Azure?" "I would, thank you," Maggie replied. As Daniel enthusiastically described the vehicle's features, Maggie noticed Blake leading the well-dressed couple directly to the Azure. He opened the door with a flourish, inviting Mrs. Harrington to sit inside, The same car he'd claimed was appointment only. That's quite all right, Maggie assured the now uncomfortable Daniel. I understand how these things work. Across the showroom, Blake was performing his well-rehearsed sales routine. This particular model has a waiting list of 8 months, he told the Harringtons, but I've set aside one for special clients. Mrs. Harrington ran her hand along the leather interior. It's exquisite, but I'm not sure about the color. We could certainly discuss custom options, Blake assured her. Maggie approached quietly, standing just within earshot. Excuse me, she said. I was hoping to inquire about purchasing this model. Blake's face reddened. As I mentioned earlier, this vehicle is being shown to these customers, he said with barely contained irritation. Perhaps you could come back another time or, as I suggested, check our used car options. The couple looked uncomfortably between Blake and Maggie. I'm specifically interested in this car, Maggie stated calmly. For my sister's birthday next month. Blake stepped away from the Harringtons, lowering his voice. Look, I understand people like to dream, but this is a place of business. That vehicle costs more than most homes. Now, I've been patient, but you're interrupting a legitimate sale. Several nearby customers had stopped to watch the uncomfortable exchange. Daniel hovered anxiously at the periphery. I'm prepared to make a cash purchase today, Maggie said, maintaining her composure. That was when Blake's professional veneer completely cracked. He laughed, a short, harsh sound that echoed across the showroom floor. Several heads turned. A cash purchase? Really? His voice was louder now, designed to humiliate. This isn't a yard sale. We're talking about $250,000. People who can afford these cars don't dress like. He gestured dismissively at her outfit. Maggie felt her cheeks flush, not from embarrassment, but from a slow-building anger. Not for herself, she'd experienced such treatment before, but for anyone who had ever been judged by their appearance. I believe my money is as good as anyone else's, she said quietly. Blake stepped closer, towering over her. Let me be clear, he said, no longer bothering to hide his disdain. You are wasting my time and embarrassing yourself. Either make an appointment for a serious discussion, dressed appropriately, or please leave the premises. The showroom had gone silent. The Harringtons had stepped away from the car, visibly uncomfortable. Is there a problem here? A new voice joined the conversation. The dealership's owner, Richard Mason, had been attracted by the commotion. Blake straightened his tie. No problem, sir. Just explaining to this lady that we operate by appointment for serious buyers. Richard Mason assessed the situation quickly, taking in Maggie's simple appearance and the watching crowd. His expression made it clear which side he was taking. I see, he said. Ms. Collins? Maggie Collins, she supplied. Ms. Collins, perhaps there's been a misunderstanding. Our clientele typically, well, they understand the exclusivity of our vehicles. I understand perfectly, Maggie replied, her voice steady despite the humiliation burning in her chest. Your sales manager has made your policies quite clear. Blake stepped forward again, his voice dripping with condescension. If you're genuinely interested, which I doubt, you can call for an appointment. But I'd suggest bringing proof of funds and dressing the part. These cars, he gestured around the showroom, are for a certain class of people. A murmur rippled through the onlookers. Someone snickered. Maggie looked around at the judging faces, at Blake's smug expression, at the owner's tacit approval of his employees' behavior. She had faced discrimination before, but rarely so blatantly. So publicly. I see, she said simply. With dignity intact but spirits bruised, she turned and walked toward the exit. Behind her, she heard Blake's voice, not quite quiet enough. Some people just don't know their place. As she pushed through the glass doors into the morning sunlight, Maggie pulled out her phone. The humiliation stung, but a small, resolute smile formed on her lips as she dialed. Tomorrow, they would learn a lesson they would never forget. A glimmer of professional hope broke through Alexander's distress. I was planning to purchase the Azure for my wife's sister as Maggie intended, but I was also considering a fleet replacement for our corporate vehicles, 7 in total. And my personal collection could use updating as well. Mason's eyes widened. A sale of that magnitude would single-handedly meet their quarterly targets. However, Alexander continued, I find myself questioning whether this is the right establishment for such a significant investment. The showroom fell into absolute silence. Blake looked physically ill. Mr. Collins, Richard began desperately, I cannot apologize enough for this unfortunate incident. I assure you, this is not how we conduct business. Please, allow us to make this right. Alexander considered this for a moment. Perhaps there is a way forward, he said finally, but it would require more than just selling me cars. Anything, Richard assured him quickly. The Collins Foundation is hosting a benefit gala next month. We're raising funds for a new adaptive sports complex for children with physical disabilities. He turned to Blake, who stood mortified. Blake, I think your presence would be educational. Blake swallowed hard. Sir? Not as a guest, Alexander clarified. As a volunteer. The foundation is always looking for people to help with setup, assist the children, and see firsthand the work being done. The implications were clear. This wasn't just about business anymore. It was a lesson in human value. Additionally, Alexander continued, now addressing Richard and Mason, the dealership might consider implementing a training program on unconscious bias. I know several excellent consultants. Richard nodded emphatically. Absolutely. We would welcome such an initiative. As for the vehicles, Alexander turned to Daniel, the young salesman who had spoken up earlier. I'd like you to handle all the paperwork, starting with the Azure for my sister-in-law. Daniel's eyes widened. Me? Thank you, sir. I'd be honored. Good, Alexander said with finality. Now, shall we discuss the specifics of the corporate fleet? As they moved toward Mason's office, Alexander paused in front of the Azure, running his hand along its sleek contour. My wife has excellent taste, doesn't she? Behind them, Blake Thompson stood motionless, his perfect world fundamentally altered. The harsh truth had finally dawned on him. He had revealed his character not by how he treated those he thought important, but by how he treated those he believed were not. 1 month later, the Collins Foundation Benefit Gala transformed the Grand Boston Hotel into a celebration of possibility. Children with various disabilities and their families mingled with donors, medical professionals, and supporters. Near the entrance, Blake Thompson stood, not in his usual polished suit, but in an event staff uniform. He directed guests and assisted a young boy in a wheelchair. The past month had changed him profoundly. What had started as an obligation, the price of professional survival, had turned into something unexpected. As he witnessed the challenges these children faced daily and the dignity with which they met them, his perspective shifted. Across the room, Maggie Collins, elegant in a simple blue dress, approached him. Despite knowing who she was now, Blake was struck again by her lack of pretension. How are you finding the experience, Blake? She asked. He considered the question seriously. Humbling, he finally answered. And necessary. Maggie nodded. Thomas seems to have taken a liking to you, she observed, referring to the boy in the wheelchair. He's teaching me about adaptive basketball, Blake admitted. Apparently, I have terrible form. This drew a genuine laugh from Maggie. He's an honest coach. Blake's expression grew serious. Mrs. Collins, I know I've apologized formally, but I need to say it directly. I'm truly sorry for how I treated you. There's no excuse. You're right, there isn't, she agreed, but without malice. The question is, what have you learned? Blake thought for a moment. That worth isn't determined by appearance, position, or possessions. And that everyone deserves respect until they prove otherwise, not the other way around. Good lessons, Maggie acknowledged. Expensive ones too, I imagine. Blake nodded ruefully, thinking of the substantial business the dealership had lost when Alexander decided to purchase only the Azure and not the additional fleet. Worth every penny, he replied sincerely. Across the room, Alexander joined them, placing a gentle hand on his wife's shoulder. Blake was just sharing some of his insights, Maggie explained. Alexander nodded. I hear you've become quite involved with the adaptive sports program. Yes, sir. In fact, I've signed up to continue volunteering after my required period. He hesitated, then added, and I've been working with Mr. Mason on revamping our customer approach at the dealership. No more qualifying by appearance. I'm glad to hear it, Alexander said, then surprised Blake by adding, which reminds me, that corporate fleet I mentioned, we're still in the market. Perhaps you could handle that transaction. Daniel speaks highly of how you've been mentoring him. Blake's expression registered shock before settling into genuine gratitude. I would be honored, Mr. Collins. Truly honored. Later that evening, as the event wound down, Blake watched Maggie and Alexander Collins working the room, not flaunting their wealth or influence, but genuinely connecting with each child and family. He reflected on how completely his perception had changed. A month ago, he would have dismissed someone like Maggie Collins based on her casual appearance. Now, he understood that true value ran deeper than designer labels, luxury cars, or executive titles. As Blake helped Thomas back into his wheelchair after a photo session, the boy grinned up at him. You know what, Mr. Blake? You're pretty cool for a grown-up. Blake smiled. Coming from you, Thomas, that's the highest compliment I've received in a very long time. And he meant it. We all make judgments based on appearances, don't we? But as Blake Thompson discovered, looking beyond the surface can reveal extraordinary people and life-changing opportunities. If this story resonated with you, please hit that subscribe button and join our community of story lovers. We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever misjudged someone based on their appearance, or been misjudged yourself? Your experiences might inspire others. And remember, the true measure of wealth has nothing to do with your bank account. It's about how you treat others when you think no one important is watching. See you in our next story, where another powerful lesson awaits.